Hello,
Good evening,
everybody. It is
Starshine.
Saturday night. I'm sorry, what?
I said, good evening, Starshine. The Earth says hello.
Yes. So, hello, everybody. It is Saturday night at 10 o'clock in the Eastern time zone, which is not where I'm at. And this, of course, is Starfleet Tactical. And I, of course, am Chris Weave, not talking for his employer because I never do. And I've got Alec with me this week. So he's just a little over 1 week late in showing up for the show. So I shouldn't do that because you had the absolute, and I've also got LYSSA here, obviously too. But Alec, I shouldn't give you any shit for that because you had just about the best reason for missing the show. He later told me, "Oh yeah, I've been sick all week or sick for a couple of days," and it's like, well, then why did you agree to come on the show if you were sick?
Because you needed someone, yeah. And it was it was one of those things where I was busy trying to do stuff at the same time, exhausted and trying to get some sleep, and it didn't even register. So now I'm wisely setting my alarm when things happen because it's so easy. I tried the beginning of the day to check my Google's, my Apple schedule. But especially with something that's at night, it's kind of hard to sometimes just remember, oh yeah, that's right, we're doing a live stream tonight.
Well,
I've gotten out of that.
I've learned over the couple of years we've been doing this that occasionally you get called away to like do an animal rescue.
Oh God.
And there's been a couple of times where at the like 15 minutes out, a half hour out, it's been like, oh, I've got to go rescue this dog. And I think that it's more important that you go rescue the dog. And so I've kind of adopted a policy of always having a plan B if you're going to be on the show.
That's a good idea.
Last week I was fully prepared to do that one solo. This week I pulled together some slides that we can go through to sort of structure the conversation. But this week we're going to be talking about Wing Commander, and LYSSA and I were talking before the show started, and LYSSA has not actually seen the movie.
I have not seen them. I knew about the video game. I did not realize there was a movie.
Yeah.
So the movie came out in 1999, had a budget of $27 million, which it did not make back, which is why there have been no more.
Really?
Yeah,
I was 7 in 99, so like I may or may not have seen it around that time. I'm sure it has been played in my household. Just because the kind of movies my dad watches. I do not, for the life of me, remember it.
Well, it's a movie that, I've mentioned it on the show a bunch as a guilty pleasure because there's a lot in that movie that's really not very good. But there's a lot of that movie that I find that it sort of pulls me back to it. Like I put it in the same category that I put the movie Millennium, which starred Chris Christopherson and Cheryl.
Oh, I love Millennium.
Yeah,
original D&D movie.
Millennium is not a particularly good movie, but it's an enthralling movie, right? It's not objectively, it's not particularly good. It's got a lot of problems in it, but it is a movie that I find myself drawn to.
The book is amazing.
The book is amazing.
John Varley.
In fact, I think I'm actually I did it the right way. I saw the movie before I read the book. I think if I'd gone the other way, I would have been really disappointed.
That's been so long, I don't even remember what I did. But
TJ makes the comment that he doesn't think Wing Commander was even enthralling. My basic thesis on Wing Commander is that there was
so it's like a train wreck. Train wrecks are enthralling. You can't look away just because it's something that's like a train wreck in that it's a explosive mess. Doesn't make it not enthralling.
I wouldn't even call it that. I would say that it's got enough of the hallmarks of a good movie that I can watch the movie and the good parts of it shine through for me, right? And hopefully that'll become more apparent as we go through the
I think also, yeah, it is a movie that I would say that I mean, is in a way it's the perfect movie for us to discuss. Starfleet Tactical, it fits right in with what we talk about. And I feel like saying it's a movie that it's a shame that the characters get in the way of the story.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a shame that the story was, they were so determined that they were going to do World War II in space that they tried to capture the look of World War II in space without capturing the coherence of it. And so it's just sort of like, well, in World War II they had torpedoes, so let's have torpedoes. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean,
and there's a lot of
torpedoes.
And there's a lot of torpedoes. Yeah, they just have there's a lot of tropes they're working with. And
yes.
And you can tell there's a big Top Gun influence into it. And again, a lot of that stuff that just, I almost feel like, God, if we could just take the basic story and just update it and get rid of all the bullshit character shit, it would be, it'd be kind of interesting. It's
Alec, you've not met
including
yet,
the world's,
have you?
What's that?
You've not met this one.
Oh, you got a new one, huh?
Yeah, this is the baby. This is
Oh.
Shandra. She is my little orange cat.
That's a big baby.
He's 5 months old at this point.
I love orange cats.
Hi.
I lock them out of my office because they're climbing on all my books.
That's fair.
So, yeah, we have a lot of them. So, but anyway, the thing that, and it's interesting, I say the characters get in the way of the movie, but the cast is really exceptional for a low budget movie. Yeah. You look at the cast and David Warner, for Christ's sake. They got David Warner, Jürgen Prochnow, David Suchet. I mean, and I love Checky Cario. He's always amazing.
Yes.
Always. Talk about enthralling. That guy, you cannot take your eyes off him. But those 4 actors right there, screw everyone else. They can get rid of everyone else. Simon McCorkindale was wasted. But those 4 actors are like, wow, that's some heavy hitting. It's kind of like you're just kind of, you're culling the best of the European film cinema squad, so that's really impressive.
They did not deserve that script.
No, and it's just like, so much. I mean,
up to and including things like, and I'll get to this when I get to the end game.
So what I'm hearing is the casting director did their job correctly, but the writers didn't.
The casting director just should have gotten a big bonus.
And I think I have the script that Freddie Prinze is referring to, but Freddie Prinze's comment was he agreed to do the movie because he read the script and it was fantastic, and then he got to the shooting site and there was a new script and it was garbage.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And
that sounds like studio interference.
There's something labeled, there's a script out there labeled first draft that's dated like 1995. The movie came out in 99, but it's dated like 1995. There's another one labeled second draft that dated from like 97. And then there is something labeled the shooting script. Now, I've been fuzzy, and Alec, you're a guy who's Hollywood adjacent. How about Hollywood adjacent? Does that work? So I've never really understood the difference between a screenplay and a script.
A screenplay, well, and I'm no expert, so but a screenplay can be more of a story written for film, okay, as opposed to the script, which is actually the lines of what you're shooting. So I could be totally wrong about that. I'm sure someone else could jump in and say, no, there's this and this and this. That's one that I haven't been asked that before. I usually, matter of fact, I don't think I've ever used the term screenplay. I've always used the term script. So that's a good question. Someone who's a lot more knowledgeable about writing in Hollywood should answer that question than me.
And then there's the difference between the soundtrack and the score, which I do know the difference between.
So Google, in a nutshell, a screenplay connects to film and television only. It's considered a visual outline of what a production is bringing to life on the screen. On the other hand, a script is a generic, broad term that you can use in various contexts. Sometimes its usage of it doesn't even fall into visual medium. And then on the drop down, writers can create a script for many mediums, while screenplays are only for motion pictures like movies, television episodes, and web shows. Scripts are applicable for stage plays, video games, speeches, and books. A primary difference between a script and a screenplay is that a script can be for non-visual art.
So by the way, Alyssa, TJ points out that your audio seems a bit off. I had heard that it was like level of detail, that like scripts include like stage direction and stuff like that in a way that screenplays don't.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense too.
But oh well, that's something. Okay, it looks like I've got a homework assignment to go research that stuff. I'll try to do that. Let me go ahead and throw up the slides I put together and sort of structure the conversation a little bit, and we'll go through that, if that sounds good. Okay, so the first one is just the schedule stuff. So it's looking like the 23rd of December. I think I don't know if we're going to do something or not. I'm going to be traveling the next day.
Yeah, I'll be traveling that day.
I think I'll probably do something on the 23rd, but I reserve the right to change my mind. I think I'll probably be doing something on the 30th, but that depends upon where I am at the time. Actually, I probably should have said 23 December, probably 30 December, possibly. The 13th of January, I'm going to be at a science fiction convention. So the holidays are taking less of a bite out of the production schedule than you might think. Okay, so about Wing Commander. So a few caveats. I've never played the game.
Neither have I.
LYSSA, have you played the game?
I think I've played a little bit of it, but again, I was very young when this was like a thing.
How about you, Alec?
Sorry?
Have you played the game?
No, I never played the game. No, And so I guess, Chris Roberts, was he one of the principal?
I think I actually have played one of the games, but it's like one of the later ones.
Yeah.
Okay, because there was an entire family.
Yeah, he knows Chris Roberts was the director, and he's the guy behind Star Citizen.
Yes, he's the Star Citizen guy, and he was the Wing Commander guy. So I mean, he was actually
right. That I did know. Yeah, I did know that.
And so it's not that I didn't have any problems with the games. I'm just not really a computer gamer. And so
those are old games. I mean, that was all in the 90s.
Yeah, early 90s.
Yeah. I mean, that
early
was
to mid 90s.
Long time ago.
Well, actually it might be late 90s. But the upshot of this is that I don't have any opinion about the movie from whether it fits in with the canon, because I don't understand the canon at all. I haven't read the novel. I have watched the movie a couple of times. Now, I backed up by the website, by a shooting script that's on a website. To be honest, when I went through these slides, I didn't even really look at that. I didn't really pay any attention to that. I did read, okay, where'd I put it? Okay. I did read the Wing Commander Confederation Handbook, which says official and authorized on it. And you'd think that something that came out at the same time as the movie that's official and authorized would match the movie. It does not. And it's also internal. it's internally inconsistent. There's a few places where it clarifies a few things that are unclear in the movie, but it's not internally consistent with itself, and it's not internally consistent with the movie. For example, it says that the Charybdis, it describes Charybdis as a pulsar, and it says it's in the Oort cloud of the Earth, and Scylla is right next to it. And none of that makes a damn bit of sense, especially since there is a map on another page of that book that shows that the Charybdis pulsar is like way over someplace else.
Okay, so that's the difference between an artist taking artistic liberty and like not actually paying attention to the book.
Well, and other things too, because, and you see this all the time, especially back in the days when people did novelizations. So the novel has been worked on for a while. So the novel does not come out based upon the final shooting script. What the novelist had was a much, much, much earlier version of the script to work with. And so it's not unusual for the novelization to not match the novel or not match the movie. And that's because they made changes.
Right. Yeah.
That happens all the time.
I will say that, and again, the novels of the game were, my friends were just enthralled, talk about enthralled with the novels. They said the books were amazing. And then they were disappointed by the movie. But and they were,
I've got a couple of the books. Maybe I should work on fleshing out my connection.
Yeah, because they said the books were just fantastic.
Okay, I need to go and double check those. And I've got the novelization of the movie, and I haven't actually read it, so I don't know if some of the stuff in there makes more sense than it does in the Wing Commander book, the handbook thing. So at least what they give is actually meets the criteria of a handbook. The High Guard manual for Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda is just basically a season 1 and 2 episode guide. So they call it the High Guard manual, and then it's not about the High Guard. It's an episode guide, which is just like, yeah. I blame Kevin Sorbo personally for that. Okay, so here's what I sort of threw together.
It's Kevin.
As well I should. I'm going to a little bit of background about the movie, a very quick summary of it. I assume I don't have to say that this is going to be riddled with spoilers. And then a more detailed outline. I basically broke it down into basically 8 slides, and then talk about a few problems, and then what I liked. Okay, so I think I said all this stuff except for the Rotten Tomatoes. It had a 10% freshness rating and a 26% audience rating. And so, as I say there, was it that bad? Yes, but it's a yes, but, right? I don't want anybody to come away thinking that I think that this is a good movie, because I don't think that this is a good movie. I think this is a movie that had some good parts that I find attractive.
Again, D&D movie, the original one from like 2000. It's so bad. So bad.
So Olive says, I need a memory refresher anyway. Couldn't find the movie. I just got it on YouTube. I mean, I paid money to watch it on YouTube. I think it might also be on Amazon Prime, but I watched it on YouTube.
The Wing Commander?
The movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a search for it. It turns out I think I did a search for it. It was $10 to buy, $4 to rent, all over the place. A whole bunch of different services have it, so you can do one or the other. And so I went to Amazon, because that's where I go, and I was about to buy it, and I guess I had already bought it because it was in my library. I must have bought it last time we did a discussion about it.
I had already bought it once before too, but I was quite annoyed to discover that when I tried to do screenshots, because I wanted to do a screenshot to illustrate various points, there's some funky thing. It just gives me a black square where the movie should be.
Oh, so, that's what it was on Prime that you were watching it, or on YouTube?
No, on YouTube.
Because both of them do it. It's to stop people from getting screenshots for copyright bullshit thing.
It's to stop people from trying to convince other people that they should watch their movies and go to like YouTube to watch the movie. So, yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so let's see. The summary is the Confederation is fighting a war with the Kilrathi. This is some 20 years after a war with the Pilgrim Colonists. The Pilgrims were a subsection of humanity that sort of went off and did a whole bunch of colonization stuff. And they spent a lot of time in space and sort of had some mutations and stuff like that. I think I read somewhere that none of that background is in any of the games, but it is in here.
It was all done. Yeah, it was all done.
So it's not particularly important, except for the fact that pilgrims are Jedi when it comes to navigating. And so if you just sort of do a search and replace and say the Jedi have been wiped out, but there are still some Jedi children around and they have the magic power, you know everything you need to know. So you've got this base, the Pegasus base. It's a frontline base. It's attacked and destroyed by the Kilrathi, but the bad guys capture something called the Navcom AI that's got the information necessary to get to Earth, and they're positioned in such a way that they can get to Earth before the fleet can get home, because of course this is humans and we left the Earth totally and completely undefended. You would have thought that this takes place in like the 25th century. You would have thought by watching all those Star Trek reruns, they would have realized that the bad guys always go immediately for Earth and you should keep some of your muscle in orbit around Earth, but they did not understand that.
I also had a hard time with that whole the self-destruct on the Navcom didn't work, so let me just try and shoot through the obviously bulletproof glass. I mean, that whole thing was just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Like they don't have a door that they can open. Well, and that's, so I'm going to get to that in just a second, because there's a few interesting little tidbits in there that they throw out, and then they
pour a Coke on it.
What's that?
Like
they can't get
it's electronics. Why can't you just like pour like a soda on it?
It's in a sealed room, and they can't get into the room. Okay, so I broke it down into these 8 sections. Now I'll note 1, 2, 3 is pretty straightforward. It starts in one place, it jumps to another, it jumps to another. This other stuff is, I'm taking like, these are all intermixed. I'm taking a whole bunch of, like, there was a bunch of discussions on the bridge, and then there was a bunch of discussions in the ready room, and followed by some other stuff. And those are intermixed with each other, but I'm sort of bundling them for purposes of our discussion. Right. And then it goes through, then they get into like serious combat operations, and they conduct an operation to capture a particular enemy ship, and then there's the end game. Okay, so the attack on the Pegasus base. Now that's kind of a very dark, I should have lightened that up. So what's worse than the Kilrathi capturing a Navcom AI? And that is dressing your military in uniforms that look like this. That is clearly worse.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. Those hats are stupid.
It's like a knit cap and no collar on the shirt, and like, what the hell? At least some of the other
not
people
only got that, it looks like that's a crop top with like a tank top under, or no, not a tank top, a long sleeve.
Yeah, it's a sweater like thing, but it's a necklace sweater.
Actually, yeah, it's a mess. All the costumes are a mess.
Okay, here's the thing: if that was a fantasy setting for the top, not the hat. The hat is just ridiculous, no matter what the setting. But if this was a fantasy setting, I could maybe see that style. But this is space. Why did the fashion circle back around to that?
I don't know. But
some choices were made.
So the Kilrathi surprise the Pegasus base, and they board it. And they board it like in like 5 minutes. They're like, oh, the base is under attack. Oh, they're boarding us. Oh, they're at the front. They're at the door to the command room. So there's no defenses. There's no long-range sensor scans, right? The first that they know that there's anybody in the neighborhood is when the bombs start dropping on the base. And this is a recurring theme where sensors, like at some point they talk about long-range sensors, but most of the time, the first that they detect something on sensors is when you watch something in your own line of sight blow up, because the sensors are horrible, right? The sensors aren't as good as Mark I eyeballs. So where did these guys come from, right? Why didn't they see them? Why are they able to just cut through the defenses, etc.? And you get a hint that there might be something going on, because as they're trying to get access to the room so they can destroy the Navcom AI, right? After the self-destruct fails, but before he starts shooting at it with the rifle, somebody says command codes have been overwritten.
Right. What was that?
So that sounds like someone
so does
was
that mean does that mean
an
it's an
imposter.
inside job?
Right.
Does that mean
Sounds
it's
like
an
an
inside
inside
job?
job.
Yeah.
Now, it could be that they hacked into the system once they got access to it. But I mean, literally, the amount of time, it's one continuous scene. And the amount of time from when the bombs start dropping to they're pounding their way through the door of the command center is literally like 5 minutes tops.
Yeah.
Not even that long, right?
Tops. Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So yeah, they're trying to do Pearl Harbor, but they're doing it really badly. But it does make me wonder. And I really wish when I realized that I had the novelization and I forgot to bring it with me, I seriously thought about going out and trying to hit up some of the used bookstores to see if I could get a copy of it. And maybe that's the sort of thing that would be answered. I need to go take a look at it.
Like a library?
Well, yeah, maybe
a
but
library nearby would have it.
Maybe I'm not in my hometown.
Well, I know that, but you can still see if they've got a copy and like sit down.
Yeah, I decided I didn't have enough time to do that. I am looking forward to looking it up when I get back. So then it cuts to Admiral Tomlinson on the left there on the Concordia, and he gets the message that's several hours time late by this point from the Pegasus, from a drone that he managed to get off a drone from the Pegasus to send a warning to Admiral Tomlinson that it looks like that they're after the Navcom AI. Now, Tomlinson doesn't know that they've actually got it, but he's assuming that they got the Navcom AI, and as a result, they've got a clear path to Earth because they know what the jump points are to get to Earth. But there's all sorts of weirdnesses with how time and space and distance works and all of this. I can't make heads nor tails of any of the time distance.
Hey, it's science fiction. It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. We've already established this, right?
Yeah, except it doesn't have the excuse of time travel to sort of explain why that is. And you do see a map that shows the sector where Tomlinson and the battle group is, the Concordia battle group is. That's the other thing, is that they talk about the fleet, but the only other part of the fleet you hear about is the Concordia battle group. Where the Concordia battle group is on the one hand, and where where Pegasus is on the other hand, and where all the stuff connecting it. I think that they're giving you, they give you these two isolated things. They don't tell you where the front is, right? They don't tell you where Kilrathi space is. I think it's basically you're looking from Kilrathi space onto it. And basically Earth is not quite in the center. It's off to one side. And you're looking along the front, which sort of explains, because my first question was, let me get this straight. You're in the middle of a war. You've got this really critical base that apparently is somewhere near the front lines. It's got shitty defenses, and you've left an open path to Earth. So when do they start cutting people's heads off, right? Because when do they pull the guillotine out of storage and start lopping off the heads of people like Admiral Tomlinson for doing something like that? I think it's actually, you can maybe make the argument that it's better than it seems, but it looks really bad. I wanted to get a capture of that map so I could show you. That's the point where I realized that the screen capture wasn't working. And that there was no way for me to make it work in the time I had. And it also would have allowed me to capture the place where they spelled Admiral Tomlinson's name wrong. So there's a typo on the Admiral's name on one of the presentations.
I found a workaround for that, but it includes using my Xbox and OBS.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got some ideas on what the workaround could be, but I decided that I didn't have the time to to mess with it. So,
We can
okay,
talk
so the
after
next
this.
one is, so Tolwyn, he's talking with his aide, and they're looking at the map, and there's one ship, the Diligent, commanded by James Taggart, that they A, can contact, B, they think can get to the one ship that's in a position to potentially do something about this. And so that's the Tigerclaw. So they send a message to Taggart on the Diligent, and Tolwyn has a conversation with Lieutenant Christopher Blair, who's one of the two pilots that the Diligent is ferrying out to the Tigerclaw. And then they end up jumping a quasar, which is a recurring, or they don't end up jumping the quasar. I think they end up jumping Scylla, which there's some stuff in the book about how it all works. I've spent a lot of time studying fictional and non-fictional things like jump drives, and I'm having a hard time putting it together in my head. It really, really seems to me that there was a bunch of astronomy words, and they just sort of threw a bunch of astronomy words in and stirred it up, and you're just supposed to press the I believe button. So, okay. Supposedly the Scylla and Charybdis are right outside the Sol system in the Oort cloud, i.e. they're in our backyard, yet Marshall and Blair don't seem to know about the beacon, warning people off about Scylla. They don't know about Scylla. This is sort of like, oh, there's this giant rock right outside the harbor. Let's not tell anybody about it. Okay.
Don't be suspicious. Yeah. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
And so you've got the Admiral. The Admiral's talking to Blair. And he's saying, and Blair's responding with like, well, why me, sir? So this is roughly, I did some thinking about this, right? And I know where I am in my organization. And I know that the span of control between where I am in my organization, going up the chain of command, and who, if I was talking to somebody an equivalent distance away, who that would be. I think it would be the President of the United States. I could be wrong. It might only be the Secretary of Defense. In either case, the span of control, the difference between Tolwyn and Blair, right? So if I'm in the Blair role, how far out do I have to get to be an equivalent distance away from where my job is? And I think it's the President of the United States. It might only be the Secretary of Defense. And I can tell you, if the Secretary of Defense calls me up and says, I need you to do X, my response is going to be, yes, sir. I'm probably not going to be saying, hey, why'd you pick me?
I don't know. And given the U.S.'s track record these days, I'd probably ask more than a few questions, given that I'm a nobody.
Well, but even then, if I didn't need, if it was like, sir, I'm sorry, I don't understand why I'm the guy for this job, and I kind of need to know that in order to do the job. If I asked, I would expect to get a better answer than the one that he got, which was, I knew your father, he was a good man, as opposed to, you're the only guy in radio range who we can actually task this with.
Yeah.
He went for some stupid, I knew your father, as opposed to, yeah, you're the only one on the list. It's all about maps. It's all about geography. You're the only one on the list.
It's like, look, we cannot get in contact with anyone else. We need you to do this because you're the only one that has the ability to be in contact with us right now.
And then we see the first instance of Todd Marshall, Matthew Lillard's character, trying to get them killed, but because he violates orders and does an unapproved course change because he thinks that as a Lieutenant JG, he can just do shit and the captain without telling the captain of the ship in advance. And so he tries to get them killed, which the only purpose for that scene is so that you can see that the force is strong in Lieutenant Blair, and that he can jump the quasar or jump the pulsars or whatever you need him to jump, he can jump because the force is strong
Deus
in
Ex
him.
Machina.
Yeah. Okay, so
Hi,
then
Michael.
they get to the Tigerclaw, and there's a series of Tigerclaw bridge discussions. Blair delivers the message, and the captain and the first officer think it might be fake, despite the fact that it comes in with fleet encryption.
I just did not, that whole thing. I was like, what? Like, he gave you a disk that's encrypted. How fucking bad is your encryption? And how convoluted does it have to be for this guy to be a spy?
If this is somehow a plant, doesn't that say that you should be questioning every order you get from anybody? Like if the fact that it comes in with fleet encryption is not good enough for you to press the I believe button, what is? Are all your orders hand delivered by the president of the Confederation himself? And even then, so yeah, there's lots of places where they sort of create artificial tension, and where characters have to be dumb in order for the scene to be tense, and this is one of them. And I look at this and I go, this is, if I'm in Sansky's shoes, this isn't a hard decision, right? Okay, so I'm out in the middle of the nowhere, as near as I can tell, doing nothing, just sort of hanging out in the middle of the nowhere, alone and unafraid. And somebody comes to me and says, hey, I've got this encrypted disk, and when I read the encrypted disk, it says, Armageddon's about to happen. You're the only guy who can stop it. And it's got all the fleet codes, etc. I'm going to start off with the assumption that maybe I should try to stop Armageddon, because if it really is Armageddon, then I could stop it. And if it's not really Armageddon, what are the Kilrathi trying to achieve? Oh, the ship's in the middle of nowhere doing nothing. Maybe I can send them on a wild goose chase.
Sounds like they're there already. Yeah, no, yeah. I agree.
Insert Benny Hill music here.
Again, and then, in order to prove his bona fides, Taggart pulls out this ring.
Which I was like,
and at that point, Sansky goes, "Oh, he's got the ring." And when he's questioned on it by his first officer, it's like, this ring has been in his family for 16 generations. Okay, yeah, and
how did he get the ring?
Like, you could fake the encryption, but you can't fake the ring?
Yeah. And the ring was just like such a, what? A ring? The guy got a ring? What? Like,
yeah, and I don't know about you, but if I were Taggart and I
must have missed the previous movie where they set up the ring. That's how I was feeling. I was like, there's clearly another movie that I missed where they set up the whole thing with the ring. Because
the thing is, the ring and the ring makes less sense as the movie goes on, because then later on, when Taggart needs somebody to do something and they won't listen to him because he's just a civilian, he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm not really a civilian. I'm really a Commodore." Oh, cute, cutie.
Right.
I'm really a Commodore. Punch in this code into your computer, and it will confirm that I'm actually a senior officer. Right? I'm actually the ranking
break that out initially. Right?
Yeah. Why couldn't you have just revealed that right off the bat when things started going downhill instead of hiding?
It's like,
I understand going undercover. Like, there are situations it makes sense to have someone of higher rank go undercover in lower ranks, especially when there's potentially a situation where the base or fleet has been compromised. But
and I could maybe see
there does come a point where it's necessary to reveal yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to make yourself seem more suspicious and like you're the one who was compromising everything.
Yeah, and okay, Armageddon's about to happen. What are you waiting for?
Yeah, let me pull out the ring first. Let's start with the ring. Yeah, if I really need to tell him I'm a Commodore or whatever the fuck, I'm naval intelligence, I'll tell him later.
Now,
Jesus
Rob
Christ.
Davidoff says undercover Commodore as like a transport pilot is very funny. I sort of there's a little bit of an explanation in here in that they gave him the Commodore rank but he had been a pilot. And so the idea was they were just going to sort of turn him loose in that area and he was going to go off and be sort of Dominic Flandry, right? So I think the idea was he was going to try to sort of figure out what was going on. There were some things that they thought was going on and he was going to alluded to with the Pilgrim
must have been in that other movie.
Yeah, must have been in that other movie. Yeah. And so none of that's in there, and it sort of calls into question.
There's a movie with his name on it.
Yeah. So all this
actually
stuff,
at the footnotes at the bottom of the screen while you were watching. You didn't see it.
There's so many places here where they've got the pieces of a good movie, and it's like they didn't know what a good movie looked like, so they assembled it all wrong.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then there's all this Tigerclaw Ready Room stuff where Marshall and Blair go introduce themselves to the Tigerclaw Ready Room, and they go in a couple of simple missions early on. And Marshall does something that should get himself court-martialed because he did something that incredibly dangerous. That if he did anything comparable,
incredibly stupid. It was like,
and almost yes, and
it was so
I know.
I was like, what are you do? You're doing what? What are you doing? How fucking stupid are you? Just kill a fucking enemy. Who fucking does that?
If you did that on a U.S. aircraft carrier, you would be. The question isn't, would you lose your wings?
Oh no.
The question is whether your discharge would be dishonorable or not.
Well, yeah. How much time you're spending in Leavenworth? Yeah, I mean, it was the stupidest. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, it's just horrible.
It's like no one in the military is going to be that. I mean, buzzing the tower is one thing. That is just because.
Well, and it also goes to something that I've got on the slide at the end of about some of the problems, which is like, okay, so what's with that flight deck arrangement, right? I mean, it's like it's not like a flight deck. It's like the Bat Cave, right? You come in at 1,000 miles an hour and you just stop, right? It's like
that made no sense. That made no sense whatsoever. That whole thing was
it's just it's a bad design for a ship. It's a bad design.
Yeah,
and I have to say the ships in this show are. There's one or two exceptions, but as a general rule, the ships are uniformly ugly as sin.
Yeah, and also, yes, they are. Can anyone remember what any of those ships look like? No. And what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. Ow! Hey, stop biting me.
That sounds so familiar, except usually my comments come with a lot more cussing.
Yeah, what?
Someone seems to be full of piss and vinegar.
Oh, this is Juno. Yeah, Juno. Juno was sick, so he's smaller than his brother and sister. But he came out here and he just decided he was going to shake things up after, right?
They do that at that age.
They do.
They're really lucky. They're cute.
Yeah. No,
Shandra has started. She started this a little bit ago, so like a month or two at this point. But she does what I refer to affectionately as drive-bys on my knees, where she'll run in the room, jump up, and sink her claws into my knee and hang on it while I'm in my chair, looking up at me like, yes, hello, pay attention to me. And then she'll get off and run away.
The other thing I was going to say is they went with that whole, let's make these ships look very naval, right? And I said, it's 2600. The year was 26 something. So 26 something. So 600 years from now, you're telling me that spaceships look like that. I'm like,
if you're doing
the first one I click on, why does it look like there's a Gatling gun on the front of this thing?
Because there is.
Like,
because that is a dual neutron cannon, spelled as in a duel of honor, and it is otherwise undefined as to exactly what it's shooting, but it's certainly, all the special effects, all the sound effects make it sound like it's shooting big ass rounds, but it's unclear. And
it's all a bad ripoff of Top Gun.
I can understand why you might want to evoke naval traditions or evoke World War II, etc. That is a good way to use a trope, but just sort of randomly pasting it in place. Yeah. Okay. So lastly, Devereaux and Blair find a Concom, which is a communications ship, a Kilrathi communication ship. They have to break cover. And I forgot something really, really important back a couple of slides, and that is Tolwyn specifically gives them the orders to, I need intelligence. Go to Charybdis and find out what's going on. Find out where this enemy battle group is, where this enemy fleet is, and let me know about it. This is important because they don't do any of that. Well, they go to Charybdis, but they don't do any of the intelligence collection stuff. So they're given, Devereaux and Blair are sent out to reconnoiter with orders to not be seen, and they're seen.
Okay. Of course.
So then you end up in this
the plot demands it.
Yeah, because the plot demands it, and it allows Gerald, who is absolutely rabidly racist about pilgrims, to question Blair's loyalty. Blair does have a good line at one point when he's being questioned. It's like, so you're Arnold Blair's son, right? Do you know Arnold Blair? It's like, yeah, he was my father. He married a pilgrim woman, didn't he? And he said, and the answer was, yes, my mother. Well, and then something about questioning his loyalties, which the response was, you don't have to worry, they're dead. The only thing I think
that I know that was like, really? You didn't just slug the guy right then and there?
You could tell he wanted to.
Oh, geez.
So then then Tigerclaw ends up fighting a series of short battles, and this is actually what was needed in this situation, was slowing the Kilrathi battle group down. And that's what they end up doing, which works out well for them in the end, but that's not what their orders were. You see lots of torpedoes, and the torpedoes are really, really slow. And I spent the entire time going like, why don't I have guns? Why don't they have guns that can shoot down the torpedoes? Because they're going really slow.
Really slow.
And they're so slow that at one point, Taggart, who's in a fighter bomber, fires 2 torpedoes at the enemy ship and then clears their destruct radius by accelerating ahead of them and going underneath the target, and the torpedoes are following in his wake.
And this is the point where I'm like, oh, well, this is where the whole Honor Harrington universe thing, where the shields are for stopping the lasers and then the torpedo. Okay, I'm like, there's something to be done here, like almost kind of like a Dune shield thing, like and they don't do any of that.
They don't. It's totally incoherent. It's totally incoherent.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
At one point, the Tigerclaw takes some damage, so she decides to go hang out in a crater to sort of lick her wounds and wait for them to leave or something or another. And they fire off a decoy. And there's a specific line that the decoy has a bigger electronic signature than the Concordia. I think she'll fool them. To which my response is, how? You just said the decoy doesn't look anything like us. Why would the decoy fool them if it doesn't look anything like us?
Yeah.
Because stronger vibes, man.
So somewhere around here, the mission clearly changed because they stopped talking about getting intelligence and they started talking about slowing the Kilrathi down, which is what needed to happen, right? So that isn't bad, but it's incoherent with what their orders actually were. Okay, so they're trapped on this asteroid. They're in a situation where they're desperate for fuel. They're down to like 10% or something like that. And so somebody says, well, I know where there's fuel. There's that Concom. They detected the Concom again. They go, we can go raid the Concom for fuel cells. And so they decide they're going to go attack it. And it's just sort of like, okay, you're just going to go attack this thing. All right, that's great. It didn't work the last time, but sure, go ahead. They decide to use the Diligent for this, which is Taggart's freighter, which is conveniently configured like an assault ship with all these places for them to sit so they can go use it as an assault ship. They go aboard this thing, which the Confederation, the handbook says is 490 meters long with a crew of 200. And a handful of guys,
that feels
like 20 guys.
Suspiciously few people for a ship that size.
Yes. In fact, hey, now that you bring it up, let's talk about that. Supposedly, the Tigerclaw has a crew of like 550, and that's including pilots and flight deck crew, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's break that down. It also says they have 104 rapiers. So normally what you would have is you'd probably have 1.25, 1.5 pilots per airframe, right? If this were the US Navy, you'd have about 1.5 pilots per airframe at a minimum. But let's just say, okay, let's just round it to 100 to make the numbers work nice. So you got 100, okay? You got 100 pilots. So you need to have a crew to service the bird, right? And every airplane probably, every airframe probably has its own crew. And you've got to have a flight deck crew to move them around and stuff like that. Let's just say 3 people per airframe to do all the servicing, to handle the weapons, to fuel it, to do all the repairs, to move it around, to prep it for flight, pre-flight stuff like that. Let's just say they're incredibly efficient and they can do that with 3 people. So now we're at 400 people out of 550, and we have yet to talk about any of the people whose job it is to run the ship. We've only talked about the wing. Their numbers don't make sense. So getting back to the Kilrathi, they board this thing, which is 1,500 feet long. It's longer than an aircraft carrier. They board this thing, and 20 guys over the space of about 2 minutes are able to basically kill all the bad guys. And they discover that not only does it have fuel cells that they can take back. Oh, by the way, it's a carrier in space. How hard do you think it is to move these fuel cells, right? How big are these things, right? Are they like fuel rods? Are they huge? Are they small? If they're so small, why did we run out, right? If you've got if something this size can power my ship for a day, why would I ever run out?
Yeah, why would you not have like a stockpile? Like, unless it was extremely volatile, and even then, like, we use gasoline.
Okay,
gasoline and oil and things like that are volatile.
If it's not small, I can just go and move enough with a handful of guys to make it. Okay, I'll press the I believe button. Sure, I'll press the I believe button. Luckily, the Concom has the Navcom AI from the Pegasus, and they're using it to calculate all the jump coordinates. And as a result, because they're doing the calculations using the Navcom, we now know what they've calculated, i.e., we know exactly where they're going to jump into. And so this is the other place where it changed, because it goes from go get intelligence to, okay, we're trying to slow them down, to now we can go one step further from slowing them down. We can actually ambush them ourselves. And that's what happens
real
in the
quick,
end.
I have to highlight this. It runs on
Yes.
double A's. It was too good. Thank you, Rob.
I actually think it's 9 volts, which is why I didn't throw it up.
Oh yes, so just so the techs can stick them to their tongue first and check whether or not they're good.
So yes, so at this point, you've got all this stuff going on that involves Blair having to jump to Earth to give them the coordinates on where they're going to come out, and along the ways he has to kill a snake ear, which is a huge capital ship, which we discover is faster than a rapier. The battleship is faster than the fighter. Oh, okay.
Why? Aren't
Maybe-
fighters by definition supposed to be more agile and therefore usually faster?
To quote my friend Mike Markowitz, "Shut up," he explained.
Wait a minute. The math ain't math in here.
Yeah, the math ain't math in here. And the other thing you discover is that apparently we assume that they must have slowed down the Kilrathi, because when Blair gets there, there's this thing that shows the Concordia battle group is like hiding behind Venus. So they're already in the Sol system waiting for the bad guys to show up. And yes. Yeah. How do they hit anything? They're in the Sol system waiting for the bad guys to show up. And so when they get the coordinates, so at this point, we've already achieved what the new objective was, which was to slow them down enough to let the Concordia battle group get to Earth to defend the Earth. But they're able to take it one step further and actually give them where the jump coordinates are. So when they come out of jump, before they have a chance to spin up their shields and get their weapons online, et cetera, they come under the concentrated fire of the battle group and they're destroyed. So were these coordinates important? On the one hand, no, because the Concordia is already waiting there. Yes, because only we don't know how many forces are there, right? And we don't have a good idea whether the Concordia battle group can handle this force by itself. And as it turns out, what could have been a hard fought battle gets turned into the turkey shoot, right? Because they just plug them as they come out. And then you have the most useless scene in the entire movie. Admiral Tomlinson is standing on his bridge, watching that as each ship comes out, it is destroyed by the Concordia battle group. And his XO, his chief of staff, whatever he is, comes up to him and says, "Sir, as every ship exits, it's being destroyed by the Concordia battle group." He literally tells him, he walks up to him and says, "I'm going to explain to you what you're watching out the window."
Yes.
Now,
exposition.
And this is a great example of why, in my mind, why this could have been good, because I know what I would have had him say. I would have had him say something to the effect of, "Sir, the current tally is we've destroyed 17 of their ships. Here's the breakdown. We've taken no casualties ourselves. The intelligence, based upon our previous intelligence, we think there's X number more coming through. Our weapon stocks are fine, et cetera, et cetera." You could have given him a status report and an update from the intel weenies. He could have actually given him useful information that a commander might actually want to get in this. Or you might say, something like, recommend that you rotate the ships out because the ships in the front line are running low on weapons and we need to rotate the second line forward, or something like that. There's all sorts of things that he could have said in that scene, other than reading what the script description said that Admiral Tomlinson was doing at the time. It is the equivalent.
It's like they read what should have been like the set dressing on the script out loud.
Yeah. It's worse. It's as bad or worse than that famous science fiction example of, as you know, Bob, we're both androids and we must recharge every 4 hours or we'll die.
Like yes, we don't need you to read the blocking, please.
Yeah, it's just bad. Okay, so there's some problems with the movie making. Time is
Admiral
fluid.
exit pursued by a bear. Yes.
Yes. It's got the sensor capabilities are fluid. At one point, they detect something in long-range scans. The entire rest of the time, long-range scans means basically anything within line of sight of the ship. I mean, like there's literally instances where the first that Pegasus knows it's under attack is when they can see the bombs falling. The first that the Tigerclaw knows it's under attack is when ships when fighters that are within visual range of the ship start blowing up. It's like none of this makes any sense. There's multiple examples of tension for tension's sake. The fake tension over trusting the orders. This thing with the heat corona when Blair and Devereaux break, when they get sighted, right? They break cover because Blair says, they've spotted your heat corona. You've been spotted. It's like, and then they question him. Well, how do you know that? And so how did he know that? Why did he think that she had been spotted? If he had a reason, why didn't he say that? Like, I don't know. Like,
because the script said so.
When they came within such and such a such and such a distance, they changed their course and pointed directly at her. That would be a good indication, maybe, that she had been detected. He clearly had a reason why he thought that she had been detected. Maybe when the CO says, hey, why do you think that she had been detected? That would be a good time to share that reason.
Yeah.
They had this stupid submarine battle with this destroyer dropping rocks on the asteroid when they were hiding in the asteroid and pings coming out of it. And it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. Jürgen Prochnow is there, right? Okay, yeah, got it. You got to pretend it's a U-boat for just a little bit. But you could have done it. You could have done it with some finesse.
And is that where they say, oh, we got to be quiet?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, you're in space.
Yeah.
I know, right?
And you can maybe charitably attribute this to, like, everybody shut up, we're working the problem. Stop the chatter. Okay, maybe.
Yeah, it's like you could argue, hey, we need to think, like, I understand you guys want to talk and get the tension out, but it's difficult to think about this problem. Please be quiet so we can work on this.
Well, he's the CO at the time.
Not going to be quiet, at least be fucking, like, productive and help with the problem.
Yeah, well, and he's the CO. He can just say, cut the chatter. And they'll go, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then you've got the comm failure that isn't. And this one's a little subtle. So when Taggart finally announces, oh, I'm actually a Commodore, you can plug this in. And so he says it to Devereaux. Devereaux plugs it into her computer. The computer talks to the main computer back on the Tigerclaw and confirms it. And then they have this conversation about how Tigerclaw might be under attack, but there's no way for Tigerclaw to come call for help because Tigerclaw is in this radiation field or whatever, and she won't be able to get a communication message through. Didn't your computer just log on to the central database?
We don't.
So why can't they just text you? Right? I mean, you just had comms with the ship that 30 seconds later you're saying you can't have comms with. You just had comms with them. Yeah. Okay. I kind of liked the sets generally. I kind of liked the fact that you could see the ceiling. Okay, maybe they were a little bit too naval, but I could live with that. What I couldn't live with was the thing that just sort of sets me off is the torpedo tube covers. So first of all, the torpedo tube covers are not as durable as your typical metal trash can lid. And at one point when they fire the torpedoes, you see exhaust shoot out from the gap in between the cover and the tube. Like, there's no breach block here. They're just open to space, allow toxic chemicals to come into the torpedo deck. It's just bad.
Yeah. Also, you're letting some of the air out too, and that is potentially a valuable resource.
So they're clearly aiming for the feel of World War II combat, but they don't have any of the coherence of it, right? World War II combat makes sense. It's the real world. It makes sense. They've got the dumbest flight deck design ever. We've already talked about that. And the ugliest fighters ever. Yeah, if that is not the ugliest fighter you've ever seen, I don't know what is.
God.
Yeah, what's going on there? Like, I understand they were trying to go for a Gatling gun feel and whatnot, but it looks... And I also understand, in space, aerodynamics don't matter. So your ships can look however the fuck you want them to. It doesn't matter. It's still gonna fucking fly. But
they do have things
that? Of all things.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, one cool thing about it is, I don't know if they just based it on it or they actually recycled it. But those cockpits are British, like BAE Lightning cockpits.
Oh, are they?
I almost guarantee they recycled it.
Because I assume it's all shot overseas.
What company made it?
I think they filmed it in England and got some of these cheap and carved them up to make those cockpits. Because if you've ever seen a picture of one, in fact, I think I even found one that shows a museum that says that this was used in the movie.
Stop eating my papers.
So okay, so that's
about time for the cats to leave.
So that was the problem with the movie making. Let's talk about problems with the plot. So what are the orders again? Tolwyn never actually says delay them. He just says, give me intel. And then they change their orders to delay them, which is the orders that Tolwyn should have given to begin with. It would have been a stronger movie in my mind if that's what he had said from the beginning. Oh, by the way, I need you to go here, and if they're there, you need to slow them down. Go do that. And it should have been just from the very beginning, how do we conduct combat operations on these guys to slow them down? They actually fail to give Tolwyn any meaningful intelligence before he gets to Earth.
Sorry, I gotta get rid of that.
They actually fail to get to do the one thing they're ordered to do, and they do something else instead, which turned out to be the right answer. There's lots of unnecessary distractions in the plot. They could have made it better. They've got some really unrealistic romantic subplots, because you got to remember this entire movie takes place over 24 to 36 hours. So it's 42 hours from the time when Pegasus is destroyed to when, or 40 hours to when the Kilrathi can get there. So, and 42 hours until when Tolwyn could get there. So it's 42 hours total. And there's this delay built in before Tolwyn finds out about it. And then there's a delay before they get to Tigerclaw. So the entire romantic subplot takes place over 24 hours. There's a lot going on in 24 hours. There's a lot of people who are dealing with people they just met. And yeah, I got it. They're all young and horny. But even so,
look, you can't be horny on Maine.
They've also got
even a movie.
They've got the most cowardly love scene I've ever seen.
How so?
Matthew Lillard and I don't remember the actress's name, but it's Forbes and Marshall are in bed together, and they're both clothed.
You mean they didn't even have them in just underwear?
She's wearing a pair of shorts and a tank top.
What's the rating of this movie?
I can't remember.
Bad.
No. I mean, like is it PG-13 or whatever?
Yeah,
it's something like that, I'm sure. And so she rolls on top of him and straddles him. And it's clear that they'd been in bed for a while, right? Because she's basically saying, like, it's time for you to do this again, and he's saying, no, I got to recharge a bit. And so it's, the implications are pretty clear, but it's like, okay,
it's PG-13. I just saw.
Yeah. So, okay.
Always
TJ put that up when we were talking about the big ass Gatling gun, that maybe it was just about more DACA.
That's always a reasonable comment.
Yeah, Stephen Ross has got a good one. It's like an A-10 knocked up a moon-based interceptor from UFO.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
That really does kind of work.
Except the moon-based interceptor had one missile.
Yes, that broke into submissiles, apparently, according to
okay.
That's in the tech manual.
Oh, is it? Oh God.
Yeah, I talked about. I actually, come to think of it, I didn't talk about that in last week's show, but I did talk about the original design for the interceptor and stuff like that. So I think this movie has a fundamentally strong core, though, if you squint a little. The Kilrathi capture the coordinates to the Earth. Tigerclaw is assigned the task of slowing them down. Tigerclaw not only succeeds in slowing them down, but fundamentally turns the tables by getting the piece of information so that when the battle happens, it's a tremendous victory on our part, right? So if they would have just stripped it down to that and used that as the fundamental core and then added scenes onto that, I think the movie could have been a lot stronger than it was. So that's what I liked about this. Is I liked the core of the plot. I liked most of the sets, the low-hanging claustrophobic.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a comment about, because the hat from this angle is reminiscent of like what the Russians would have worn in World War.
Yeah, when they're outdoors in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Again, but space is cold. Depending on how well they're able to heat the ship.
Yeah.
Space is cold.
Could be.
Yeah, if you're worried about space being cold, you're outside the ship and not inside it.
Yes. Now, he's sitting in the Raptor right there, or the Rapier right there. And so that, I think that's a real aircraft. I think that's the cockpit of a real aircraft.
Could be, yeah.
That I mean, if not, they clearly got parts.
Yeah.
So I think the musical score got the job done, right? The music is sort of like crescendo-y and
fine.
And I think the acting was, now I said acceptable. I think the acting was, I have no problems with the acting whatsoever. I think the script was horrible, and I think Matthew Lillard did a good job with a character who should have been shot.
Yes.
As a danger to
Matthew Lillard's like ability to do that, though, because like you want to shoot his characters that are evil.
Yeah. And there's a scene where Devereaux has a gun like 6 inches from his forehead and is about to blow him away, and he
does psychotic well.
Blair's trying to talk her out of it, and Lillard just sort of says, like, it's okay. I've earned this. It's okay. And I think he did that reasonably well. I mean, I don't have any problem with Matthew Lillard as an actor. I have a lot of problem with this character, that somebody thought that this character was a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
but sometimes characters are there as foils too.
Yeah.
And what I think they were going for, based on what I'm hearing from you, was that they wanted him to be a foil to our lead, but they got it wrong because they fundamentally don't understand how writing works.
Yeah, and I think, you could make the argument that this is a variation of what Peter Jackson did with Merry and Pippin in the movies. Because if you read the books, Merry and Pippin might be a little bit on the naive side, but they are competent. They are not screw ups like they are at the beginning of those movies, right? They are competent hobbits. Merry is the son of the Duke. He's the closest thing they have to royalty in the Shire. He's going to take over, and they are an asset from beginning to end in the books, as opposed to if you think about it, if they would have just strangled Pippin in his sleep about day 4, they could have just walked into Mordor. But I know what Peter Jackson did what he did. He was trying to show character development, right? And so he wanted them to sort of start out as screw-ups, and you see how they grow into it. And okay, yeah, I get it. The thing is, you don't have enough character development with Marshall to really be saying that you're doing character development.
Yeah.
And he's problematic because of who he is. He's an academy grad, and he acts like a child. Right? Now, one thing that's important to point out, anybody who's ever taught at one of the service academies, I have not. I've talked with many people who have. They've all got variations of a theme. They describe them as basically a bunch of college kids who dress funny. Because when push comes to shove, they are college kids. They're learning how to be officers, but they're not officers yet, and they are college kids with all of the premier decision-making skills that college kids are famous for, right?
Yep.
And so they do almost as much dumb shit as any of the people that I went to school with do. So yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, I can get it, but Lillard's character is just like over the top. He's a caricature of a aviator.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And the problem is, I've known some aviators who are kind of like that when they're off duty, but not when they're on duty.
Oh, by the way, Bob Harnick says, interesting take on Lord of the Rings. Strangle Pippin and all will be well. Strangle Pippin and get the Eagles there in the first movie and you're set.
Yeah.
Well,
get those giant Eagles in the first movie and you're
Eagles.
You don't need
the explanation is they refuse to go into Mordor because they don't want to be seen by Sauron.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I can also look at the Eagles and say the problem with the Eagles is they don't have air supremacy, and that they can't as long as the ring wraiths are providing air cover, the Eagles can't cope with the ring wraiths, I think is what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's honestly what it is.
Yeah.
Now, that having been said, you would have thought that at some point they would have said, hey, can we at least get a ride to the border of Mordor?
Yeah, right?
I know, right? That was I was like, so if you won't go into Mordor, will you at least go around the corner from there? Because that's like a month worth of walking that you could just cut off for us right now.
Yeah, Michael Weir points out they don't travel at warp speed either. They would never have saved Frodo and Sam. So yeah, I think I can live with the Eagles. I can live with the Eagles because when push comes to shove, the Eagles participate on their own terms. I think Gandalf is just glad that he can get the Eagles to do the things that he can get them to do.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember if there's any. I think that's it for my slides. So I mean, I watched this twice this last week, including earlier today, is when I put together those slides, and I come away thinking once again that they had everything they needed to make a decent movie, right? They had the sets that they could have made work. I mean, I would have designed the flight deck differently, but okay, I can live with that. They needed to not be so focused on gravity, like when they push the wreckage off the side and it falls off the side of the flight deck. And there's a conversation early on when Blair meets Devereaux, where Devereaux is talking about the ability of the Kilrathi to outclimb them in space. And, you know, there's all sorts of stuff like that. So they fix the script and tweak some of the special effects here and there and some of the sets, and the rest of it works. You could do it with the same set of actors. You could do it with the same core of the plot. You know, they had what they needed to make a decent movie, and they made this one instead.
Well, and see, that's why, like, as you said, the original script that Freddie Prinze Jr. was given was something entirely different and was, according to him, fantastic.
And I'm looking forward. I
didn't
have the chance to go and read that script. Read the two earlier drafts that I have to see if that's what is going on. And I also, the one that's listed as the shooting script, they said they're pretty sure that this is what was actually shot, but they cut stuff out and they move things around, and it's all color coded to show what moved where, et cetera, as after they shot it. And so I haven't had a chance to go through. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to go through those 3 different versions of the script and see if there's any gems in there. And I don't even know if that's the script that Freddie Prinze is talking about. It might have been one that's even before what's labeled as the first draft. Because they might have restarted the numbering system when they brought, because the guy who wrote the original draft is not the people who made the changes to it, which is not unusual in Hollywood.
Yeah, not surprised by that.
Stephen Pressfield talks about how you can make an entire career being a scriptwriter in Hollywood and never have any of your movies made because you get hired on a case-by-case basis to
You're a script editor.
Well,
or
to do drafts,
I think is the term.
Well, script doctor is when you need somebody to come in and really seriously fix it. This is before the script doctor phase. This is when you're trying to go through and figure out. It's like, okay, it needs more X, it needs more Y, it needs less Z. And so you hire somebody who's relatively well known to you to say, okay, I need you to do a new version of this that makes these following types of changes. And so you hire a workman who can go and do that. And Pressfield, who wrote Legend of Bagger Vance and Gates of Fire and some other stuff, he was one of those guys. And he said he only had one movie made and it was horrible. It was King Kong Lives, starring Linda Hamilton. And apparently it was so bad that there was a reviewer that mentioned him and his co-writer and says, we hope that these are not their real names for their parents' sake.
Damn.
Which I thought was pretty good. So Pressfield has some very interesting books on writing and things like that, and they're definitely interesting to read. And he talked about, basically how he was one of those script writers and then he left to be a novelist. Sometimes you hire some interesting people to be your script doctor. For instance, there's a movie called Ninja Assassin, which I don't think I've talked about on the show. Maybe I have. If I have, I'm going to do it again. Ninja Assassin is a way better movie than it has any right to be. And part of that is because they hired J. Michael Straczynski to be the script doctor, and he gets a writing credit for this as a co-author on it. And he apparently like got it on a Thursday, and they were going to start shooting on Monday.
Oh, shoot.
And
well, then.
It's
what a deadline.
Really, yeah, and it's way better. It's like the other movie in this category is Blood of Heroes, starring Rutger Hauer. Another movie I always describe as way better than it has any right to be. So I recommend both of those.
Yes,
all right,
it's doctor.
It's approaching 90 minutes, and I got work to do in the morning.
Well, I think it's time to declare victory.
Yeah. Or a draw at least.
Yes. So if you haven't seen Wing Commander, I hope that we have set things up in such a way that you know what you're getting yourself in for, but you go and watch it. Same with Millennium.
Watching. If you enjoy inebriants, essentially is what I'm getting. I'm getting the feeling of enjoy your inebriant beforehand and just enjoy the ride.
There are so many worse movies you can be watching.
Yeah, and I think there's a drinking game in there. I really do. But
if it doesn't exist, someone please make it.
Yeah,
at least be drinking if you're going to watch the movie.
I need to know if this actually exists now.
For next week, I think what I'm going to do, and I'm hoping that Chris Carlson can join me for this.
There is a drinking game that someone came up with. Oh, no, it's a drink.
So my brother says, Chris, ask Alec, and Delon was asking me earlier today if you actually have a release date for Axanar.
Next summer.
And so you're still at the next summer phase.
Yep.
Okay. So Delon was looking for like, when should he put in his leave if he wants to come to the opening night?
We'll let you know as soon as we book it.
Yeah, I figured that was probably the case, because there's always the danger that if there's a lot of things that can go.
A better idea. Yeah, I mean, we still have one actor to shoot, and until that's done, it's the glide path is a lot less certain. Once principal photography is done, then it's a lot easier to book it and work everything towards whatever that premiere will be. Right now, it's just being pain. Getting principal photography done is because we have 16 of 17 actors in the can. So we've got one actor.
Everybody's got a day job.
Yeah, and we have one actor we probably are going to reshoot. So, that's a day of shooting. We got to get that day in. Once that day's in the can, everything else starts. Then VFX can work. Then compositing works. Then it all comes together. So that's my job right now, is trying to get that last day of shooting done.
Cool. Sounds good. So I started to say, I'm thinking that next week what I'm going to do is, there's a YouTube channel called We Travel by Night, and they've done some very, very nice breakdowns of the design of the original Enterprise, specifically things like, how big is the shuttle bay, and does that make sense? And where is main engineering located? And how do you fit everything that you need to fit in that dorsal connector? How do you fit like a matter antimatter conduit and a turbo shaft in that dorsal? And so what I'm planning on doing is, I'm going to watch all those videos, sort of pull together a summary of the issues that I see, and bring on a guy who actually is an engineer and has done lots and lots of engineering analysis on actual naval vessels to tell me about which issues I'm not, which issues I'm missing and stuff like that. And so there's a lot to talk about there, because that the original series Enterprise, I love the design. I love the Franz Joseph stuff, and none of it makes sense.
I hear. All right. Hard out for me. You guys can keep talking. Right. Love you all. Got cats and dogs that I got to take care of.
Sounds good. Everybody, see you next week. LYSSA, if you will do the honors.
Bye-bye.
Long and prosper, guys. Later.